It's nice to have you all here, and it's my pleasure to chair this next section on biosecurity. I'm Jen Schooler, I'm the CEO of New Zealand Avocado. And as a CEO of an industry body, I have to say that we probably didn't 2 years ago look at biosecurity in the way that we do now. It did tend to sit in the corner office of an expert, probably of the scientist in the team. But biosecurity remains our biggest threat. And I think it's very positive in New Zealand that we're actually saying it's a threat, let's look at it head on. Let's actually get our capability together. Let's talk about it. Let's find innovative ways to meet those challenges of biosecurity. Let's make sure we've got the science, we've got the capability, and we've got a system in place. And we are a signatory under the government industry agreements. I'm now chair of the Deed Governance Group, and that conversation about biosecurity is absolutely essential if we are to maintain New Zealand in the pest-free status that we are in. And we've got a great range of speakers here today talking about that. Have we got Roger? We've got most of the great range of speakers. So Barry O'Neill from Kiwifruit Vine Health is going to talk first of all about, he's going to pose a question for us about whether we're actually in the right system, and I'll ask Barry to come to the stage now.
Thanks, Jen, and good afternoon, everyone. And this is not the presentation that I'm going to give. Thank you. My name's Barry O'Neill. Not only am I the CE of Kiwifruit Vine Health, but I have the pleasure to be on the governance group of this Science Challenge, and very much enjoy both the challenge and the opportunities that we're embarking upon. My talk today, who has read my abstract? Who hasn't read my abstract? Okay, you need to read my abstract, which you can't because you haven't downloaded the booklet probably. But my abstract basically is a provocation, and that provocation is we're wasting 200 million a year putting money into the border to try and keep pests and pathogens out of New Zealand. Because everything that's going to get to New Zealand will get to New Zealand. Maybe it won't be tomorrow, but over 100 years, over 1,000 years, it will get here. So really, we are just trying to hold back the tide, and in doing, spending a lot of money, and that money maybe should be redirected towards the National Science Challenge to find new tools and technology to manage the impacts when these pests and pathogens arrive. So that was the summary of my abstract. This talk comes with a quiz. At the end of this talk, there will be a quiz as to whether or not you, the audience, agree to my provocation or whether you don't. And so those of you that have not downloaded the conference app, please do so now. And we will have instructions at the end of the presentation. So, as I said, King Canute, very powerful man, great king. He thought he was almighty and could achieve just about anything. So he ordered the tide to stop coming in, and they plonked his chair there. And of course he failed dismally, and that's basically what my provocation is with respect to what we're trying to do at our border with biosecurity. Now, we have technology at the border, 19th century technology, but it does pretty well, okay? So we've got the good old X-ray machines, we've got the dogs. And I think MPI, by the way, do an absolutely sterling job trying to keep these pests and pathogens out of the country. The pressure that is happening to the system. So you'll see there increase in mail parcels, that's internet trade, 249%. Cruise industry, huge increase, 220,000 passengers a year now getting off ships. And then you look at the air passenger arrivals, increasing 9% per year from countries and cities that we've never had tourists arrive before. 5 new Chinese air carriers started operating in the last 6 months. So huge increase in trade and tourism happening. And of course, with that trade, there is risks. There's no such thing as zero risk in life. So over a 10-year period, this is a B3 piece of work, analysing what pests and pathogens were found on the produce. And you can see there taro from Fiji's over that time, 4,000 or so pests found. Significant number of pests and pathogens, well, mainly pests, being found on imported produce by MPI that then gets fumigated, of course. A lot of people, when they see this, say this is terrible. When I talk to the Australians about what they get from New Zealand, exactly the same. Exactly the same as what we are getting from Australia coming in on this chart here. So rock melons from Australia. You know, so our exports to other countries have pests as well. Sterility in trade, no such thing. So we're never going to be at a place or a situation where we have no risks with respect to this trade and travel. So what is an acceptable amount of risk that can come through the border? And is no border inspection ultimately an acceptable outcome? So this is a bit old now, but Sandy referred to painted apple moth a time a decade ago when Sandy and I worked together, and that cost in the order of 65 million. A lot of that cost, by the way, was motels for people that couldn't manage to be sprayed because they had aversions or health issues with spraying. Breakfast service, we had to supply breakfast. We had a medical service for those people in the area. So if you look at these figures, yeah, they're big, but they're not sort of 200 million a year figure, which is what we're spending on the border at the moment. So the cost of incursions, you wouldn't actually say, warrants a $200 million program a year, would you? However, it's not actually the costs of eradication that are the problem here. It's the costs of not eradicating the new arrivals, which are the real problem that we are faced with. PSA, the industry that I came from, this is $1 billion impact to our industry when you have to cut out your orchards and start again. Possum, introduced. Probably the biggest number one pest in New Zealand. The money that's been spent on possum control every year. And total pest management, Conservation Authority worked out about $1 billion a year. This is actually a picture of $1 billion American dollars. These are $100 notes. So you can do your own sort of thinking about how much bigger $1 billion New Zealand would look like. But we are spending $1 billion a year trying to manage the impacts of pests and diseases. So pretty serious coin. Certainly then we're starting to think, well, if we can keep some of these nasties out with a $200 million program, maybe it's not so bad after all if we don't have to increase that to a $2 billion investment every year. But then, of course, we get to areas which you just can't price as part of being quintessential New Zealand. So Kari dieback. So if New Zealand has a future without karri trees, what a tragedy. So 3 pictures of Kari dieback, which I'm sure you've all seen. The exudate that the trees sometimes show, dead trees in a forest and a stand of dead trees. How do you put a price on that and to stop that happening in other parts of what is essentially New Zealand? So my provocation to you is actually that we do need a border service, and we actually need a border service that's going to do a little bit better than what it's currently doing. It's going to be costly, but I would suggest that cost is money well spent, well invested. There has to be changes. There's no way the 19th century technology of X-ray machines and beagle dogs can actually manage the risks at the border into the future. So roll on the Biosecurity 2025 strategy. Now, this is the strategy that was announced by MPI last November, and that Roger Smith, who's just arrived late. Roger, I'm just filling your slot. Don't get your breath back. I'll be 20, 30 minutes, okay? The Biosecurity Strategy 2025, it's a refresh of the original strategy. Fantastic. And I just want to talk about two elements. I want to talk about this element, a biosecurity team of 4.7 million, and I want to talk about a toolbox for tomorrow. But every one of these elements is really important for New Zealand. And if you haven't heard about it, and if you're not engaged with it, you should be. So a team for 4.7 million. So a lot of people think about a team for 4.7 million and think about everyone out there looking for bugs. And that's great. If we can find brown marmorated stink bug and eradicate it before it gets established, fantastic. But to me, a team of 4.7 million New Zealanders is much, much more than that. This morning, we had a discussion about the word social licence and how a number of us don't like the term social licence. And Sandy used community engagement, which I prefer. If we don't take the community with us on our biosecurity journey, we will never be able to eradicate pests and pathogens that arrive in New Zealand. And I'm not suggesting that we try this method of eradication, which we did in 1999, but we definitely need public support for what we need to be doing. In 1999, we had public outrage from a very small percentage of the population in Auckland. We had a very small percentage that were standing up saying, you have to do this. We had a very large silent majority, and we had a very small percentage of activists, and they were very, very effective. So wherever you turned in Auckland in those days, you were just bombarded with either a spraying aircraft or anti-spray slogans. Now, to the point where the last Queensland fruit fly incursion in Grey Lynn, the social media was saying, oh, here we go, sprayed again, getting sprayed again. Now, we never aerial spray, of course, with fruit fly. New technology, to me, coming out of Biosecurity 2025 and some of the work being done currently within the CRIs, B3, the Bioprotection Research Centre, etc., are key to me to continue to get community engagement. So this is a UAV helicopter targeting spraying. Is it any better than a big plane spraying? I don't know. We have to have that discussion with the community. Myrtle rust. Okay, very topical at the moment. 4 years ago, we knew it was coming to New Zealand, surely. Surely we did. So what have we done to actually understand what it will do now that it's here? And how many people in the audience think we can eradicate myrtle rust from New Zealand? Do you want to be brave enough to put your hands up? Okay, thanks, Bill. Okay. I think it's a big call to eradicate something like this now, but we had 4 years to get prepared for it. We knew it was coming. What's its impact going to be on Manuka, Kanuka, Fijoas, on our Pūtakawa? What type of race have we got in New Zealand? We still don't know. Science, to me, needed to be engaged and answering those questions in advance. I know David Turlon put up a proposal through B3 to the Plant Biosecurity CRC, wasn't seen as a priority, didn't have enough money to actually make it work. God, I wish it had got through now that we're actually facing myrtle rust and the challenge of eradication. Brown marmorated stink bug. We're trying to be more proactive. We realise that with brown marmorated stink bug, you don't spray Auckland with BTK, you would have to spray it with a synthetic pyrethroid, something really nasty. You never do it. So how are we going to eradicate it? Maybe we can't. So what's plan B? So thanks again to John Charles and B3 and others for pointing us on the road of Trisulcus japonicus, the parasitoid wasp, midge, tiny. Lays its egg into the egg mass of brown marmorated stinkbug. 80%, up to 80% effective when the eggs hatch of the parasitoid and grow in the egg mass. We are going to have a application to the EPA for the release of this biocontrol agent before brown marmorated stinkbug establishes in New Zealand. First ever application in advance. We need to get smarter. We need to be thinking about, hey, if this arrives, we've then got a 12-month, 2-year delay to be able to eradicate. So what can we do to be more prepared? Toolbox for tomorrow. We need a bigger toolbox. Maybe not that shiny, but we need a bigger toolbox. We don't have a very good toolbox at the moment. Science and technology is where we're going to get the solutions of tomorrow from. If I was starting off recreating a border program from scratch, would we end up with what we're doing today? I don't know. I've often thought that'd be an interesting exercise. Just start off blank sheet of paper, new country, didn't have a border, but now wants to set up a border service, and what are the elements and what are they going to do and how are they going to do it? And I think we need to be thinking more along those lines. Where can we intervene more effectively to stop the risks that we really want to keep out of New Zealand? We're not going to keep them all out, but we're going to keep most of them out. X-rays. Okay, old technology, nearly there. Did I get the red flag, did I? Okay, sorry. This technology, when it was introduced, not very flash, not very smart. Who would have thought there was going to be an application in biosecurity? And of course, the Americans have taken it one step further with their mobile X-ray trucks. So these trucks drive along, stationary vehicles, X-raying as they go. And guess what? You can find some pretty interesting things in trucks of bananas coming into America at times. Technology, application. Surely we can be smarter with some of the technology that we know that's out there and applying it to our challenge at the border. Last one. This was the first computer that Steve Jobs made. Come a long way, hasn't it? Who would have thought when that was made that would actually end up with what we've got today? And this is the latest concept where you've got the computer band that projects out onto your arm. And that's only a matter of years away. So we can continue to look like that. The survey, please. Look at your app. You've got 30 seconds to do it. There's 3 questions. One of them with respect to should the border... Do you want to put that pin up again? Should the border... the pin's up there, 7497. Should we disband the border? Should we keep basically the status quo? Or should we do more along the lines I'm suggesting? 30 seconds. Sorry. No one can get in? All right, we'll do it later. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Barry. Well, I actually think it's a fair call that Barry took about 3 minutes of Roger's time because he was happy to step in, allowing Roger to get here. So thank you very much, Barry, and posing some great questions that hopefully we'll be able to get on the app later on.